Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to Kitabe Club YouTube Live. And we have a very special guest today with us. We have the very famous Shrabani Basu with us. So let me tell you who Shrabani Basu is. Shrabani Basu is a journalist, historian, and a Sunday Times best-selling author. Her books Victoria and Abdul, Spy Princess, and The Mystery of the Parsi Lawyer, about which we'll be talking today, they speak of her love for history. She has always combined her journalism with her love for history, and all her books have evolved from her observations about the shared histories of India and Britain. So let's welcome our guest for tonight. Hello, Shrabani.
Hello, lovely to be here, Neha.
It's an honor to host you.
Well, it's a pleasure.
So, without any further ado, let's begin.
Mhm.
So, Shrabani, while I was reading the book, I had this thought constantly in my mind that
Mhm.
how did you come to know of George Edalji's story, and what made you pick it up for creating a book, complete book about it?
Well, I'm a great fan of Arthur Conan Doyle. I grew up reading the Sherlock Holmes books, and of course, I'd read some of his biographies. So I knew that the only case that he had taken up personally ever in his life was to do with an Indian lawyer. And of course, it's barely known this case. So, it was just
Yeah.
calling out to be explored for me, especially, given my Indian origin, given how much I love Arthur Conan Doyle. I just wanted to see how, the whole story evolves. So, yeah, that was my calling.
Great. So, all your books,
Mhm,
be it Spy Princess, be it Victoria and Abdul, they are all very research based,
mhm,
and you delve deep into the history.
mhm,
And I'm sure it takes a very long time. It's a long process to
mhm,
do the research, create it into a book,
mhm,
which will be liked by the readers.
mhm,
So sometimes during that long process,
mhm.
do you feel demotivated, or to put it the other way, how do you keep yourself motivated?
Well, basically, you have to choose a subject which you're passionate about. I think that's the starting point. And with me, each book takes about, 3 years, 4 years. So it's a long process. I have to live with my
Right.
characters and go on this trail. So, of course, sometimes you're really frustrated. You're finding nothing. For 2 weeks, I will be working and I find nothing. You hit a wall. But then at the end of it, sometimes you find something and it's like treasure. You've just found something in these archives to hang your story on. And, that is perfect. And I'm always looking for the little things. I find that the little details matter in bringing a story alive. So for me, it's always a hunt for these. And the more I uncover, the more passionate I get. So it just goes on, goes on for several years till I finally write the book.
So yes, I think passion is something which keeps you going, which keeps
Mhm,
everyone going. So, talking about, like you said, you research a lot about the characters, you look for details.
mhm,
So, while you are writing about, these are all true stories that you have written about,
of
right?
course.
They are, somewhere buried in the history, and people don't know about them.
Mhm,
So, you bring out these stories for the people to know.
mhm,
So, while you are doing this, you are reading about the characters, you're reading about that era.
mhm.
So, does your own judgment or does your own imagination go into the character development or the story development, or is it completely factual?
It is completely factual, but when you are writing, say, a biography, you want to enter that person's mind, right? You want to know what he or she is feeling at this particular time. And how do you do that? You do it through facts, actually. You read their letters or their diaries, and that's the insight into their life. So for me, I enter their lives through the personal things that they may have written, their letters or archives, or sometimes something written about them by other people, and that also gives you an insight into their character. There's newspaper reports are very important. I rely a lot on newspaper reports. I rely on diaries, archives, scrapbooks, photographs. So many things help to make up your story, and for me all these are really excellent resources.
So, while you look for all these things, do you sometimes, like, especially when I was reading the mystery of the Parsi lawyer, I, at
Mhm,
a lot of points, I thought that, how would you have gathered this data?
mhm,
How would you have, collected all this information? It's so detailed.
mhm.
So, how do you go about that process?
Well, it's hard work, hard graft, no shortcuts. So for this, I had to go to like several archives. So one is the Portsmouth Library, which has the Arthur Conan Doyle papers. I followed the trail of the police records at the National Archives. I went to the, the place, the scene of the crime. So I was on George Edalji's trail as well, seeing where he lived. I went to the vicarage. I like to get the atmosphere of the place. It may have changed, but the vicarage is still there. Where he lived is still there. The graves are there. It's the atmosphere that you have to imbibe. At least I do in my books. And well, it's researching in a lot of libraries, and then by the end of it, having a lot of material that you then have to sift through and turn into a narrative that is easy to read and is coherent.
Wow, I really love that idea of you going to the vicarage, because while I'm reading the book, I kept on imagining how it would have looked, like the descriptions of the house that you've given. So I keep
Mhm.
on imagining how it must have looked. There are a lot of pictures also in the book
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you have included. So
Hmm.
that give a very good idea about the
Hmm.
entire story.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
that's wonderful, actually.
Hmm. Well, that's the charm of writing nonfiction, is that these are real life stories. These characters existed. They lived in a place, they inhabited a certain place. There'll be photographs of them. And all these bring a story alive. You can see somebody careworn. There's a photograph in the police cell of George Hidalgi, when they take the police mugshot, when they arrest somebody. That tells its own story. So, I've used all these liberally in the book to illustrate it.
Yes, yes. Okay. Now, since you do a lot of extensive research, you speak to a lot of people about it, you find a lot of data
Hmm.
about their daily routines, or, you really dive deep into their lives. So,
Hmm.
were there any interesting anecdotes which happened and which you still remember while you were penning down the book or while you were researching for the book?
Well, there is the really funny incident was when I started off, and what caught my attention, I always knew the story, but you always need a peg to get you started on the research, and that peg was an article in the Times newspaper over here in London, and it said that there was going to be an auction of certain letters of Arthur Conan Doyle, and these letters dealt with the Edalji case. So obviously, for me as a journalist, the curiosity is immediately aroused, and they were going to be auctioned in this auction house called Bonham's, which is near Knightsbridge. And so I said the papers are on display till they are auctioned. So I just went there. I'm a journalist anyway, so I get access. So I went there and I looked at these boxes, and then I just, they had boxes and boxes, and I couldn't let go of the boxes. I just kept on. And normally, I was completely honest. I said, I'm a journalist. I want to do a piece on it, but you're not allowed to sit. It's not a library, it's an auction house. Either you're a bidder and you want to buy the papers, or you want to do a story and you have a look at a few letters and you go. I was there for a few hours till they came up and they said, "You're taking rather long on these letters." And then I said, "Yeah, they're so interesting." Then again, they came back and they said, "You are taking far too long on these letters." And they were being very polite, but getting slightly aggressive. And then finally, I was like, politely, "I think you have spent too long on these letters." And it's basically saying, "Leave." So I had to pack up and go. And well, the auction was coming up, and I was so tense because I said, suppose they go to a private collector, and then I never see these papers. There was so much more, my appetite had been sort of whetted. And but anyway, I was very lucky. Sometimes you need some luck. They were bought by a library, by the Portsmouth Library. So within months, they had classified it, and I could go and access it properly, legally, and not be chucked out. But yeah, I was chucked out of the auctioneer, so that was funny.
Yeah, actually, that's funny. So, okay, now coming to what you would be writing in future. So,
Hmm.
you always write about history.
Hmm.
I know history is your favorite topic and you love it,
Hmm.
and but if Shravani was to write some other genre, what would it be?
Goodness, I haven't thought about it, but I mean, I love a thriller, right? So it would
I
have to
thought you
be.
would say that.
It would have to be some sort of historical thriller because that I do love that. There's nothing like reading something that you can go into. Also, I love books that I mean, my fiction reading are books that span a long era, so they are set in history, and you get into your teeth into something that spans over decades or a really big historical theme that happens, and then the lives go around that. So that sort of thing is something I love. But for the moment, I stick to nonfiction, and I stick to history. Everybody I write about is dead, which is, oh, well, it's not so inconvenient, but sometimes it's okay. Hmm.
Yeah. So actually, whenever we have a live for Kitabe Club,
Mhm.
we always ask the authors to give us some recommendations. But I'm going to
Mhm.
twist my question for you today, because
Okay.
you said you write about history, and
Mhm.
you are, if given a chance, or if you were not to write about history, you would write a thriller.
Mhm.
So I would ask for both the kinds of recommendations from you.
Oh boy. Okay. So history, you mean fiction or nonfiction?
Yeah, historical fiction.
Historical fiction. Well, for me, those have to be Leo Tolstoy's. Anna Karenina is a book I absolutely love. I keep going back to it. I must have read it 3 or 4 times. So books like that. I have to confess, I have never finished War and Peace. It is one of my challenges. Maybe when I retire, I will finally curl up with it. I dip into it and I dip out, and I have never read it cover to cover at one go.
That's a
So
pretty thick one, and I
it
think there are a lot of
is.
characters, and yeah,
It is. It's very, but it is just so, you just get into it. It's just so beautiful once you do. And then, of course, something else happens and then you leave it and it's gone. So I've never done it at a stretch. So, these are the books that I really love. And what is the other genre? Oh, yeah, my detective, right? Yeah. For those, you have to go back to the old school. For me, it's just sitting and reading just for light reading, I'd go into an Arthur Conan Doyle and not just read his Sherlock Holmes book. Sometimes I enjoy reading his short stories, which you don't even figure those. And they are so different. And some of them, he's just such a great writer. So you can go into those. I also love a Christie any day, just I mean, she is just wonderful. She is the queen of crime for a reason.
absolutely.
So you can just go back and just reread those books over and over again. They are so easy to read, and yet there's
Yeah.
always a plot. And sometimes you've forgotten it because you read it long back and you forget the ending, and it's still a thrill. So yeah, definitely these two.
So have you ever come across an Agatha Christie where you were able to find out who the culprit is?
Well, you're always guessing, aren't you? But I mean, I've read them so many times, and by now I think I know most of the books and I know most of the culprits. So it's a little difficult to answer that, but they're still
Yeah,
fun to
because
read.
till now I have never been able to guess the culprit correctly in her
Mm-hmm.
books. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm still waiting for that moment to happen when I can guess who the culprit is.
Yeah, yeah, it's always a challenge. I mean, she's always got something for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that those are some wonderful recommendations by Shravani. All right. Now, Shravani, when you're not writing, what you're doing?
What am I doing? Well, I love watching films, so I could curl up and watch films. I could now, of course, with television and box sets, I often binge. Uh, Another passion of mine is gardening. I absolutely love gardening. So whenever if the sun is shining in London, which is very rare, so I will step out there and I love my garden, and I grow vegetables, I grow flowers. I'm always doing tinkering, and that's a really
Oh, wow.
it's something that really relaxes you and something I'm passionate about. And it's a constant war against slugs and snails and other things that are coming out there to get you. So it's always a challenge. Growing an organic garden is a huge challenge. So my heart goes out to farmers because often I find things have just gone overnight, thanks to the slugs. Mm.
So, okay, what are you watching right now? Which shows are you watching right now?
What am I watching right now? So many things. So there is this new series that has come out. It's called The Staircase. It's based on a true crime that happened in the US. It's got Colin Firth, who's excellent. And I've just finished three parts, and I think the fourth part is going to come out soon. So that's one of the series I'm watching. And what else am I watching? I dip into this and that, and sometimes I lose interest and it's gone. But yesterday I went to the theater, so I watched My Fair Lady on stage, which was lovely after so many years. So this is a Broadway production that has now come to London's West End, and it was great. It was very, very good, very enjoyable.
Great. So it was wonderful talking to you, Shrabani, about the book, about what you are as a person, and getting some amazing book recommendations from you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks. Enjoy.
Thank you.